Hi, it's Gadget UK here again, back for another build. So yeah, there will be some repairs coming up. It's a case of, with my health and everything, I'm having to focus on things I'm capable of doing, and builds are far easier than some of the time-consuming repairs and stuff. This won't take very long to throw together, an hour and a half maybe, something like that. So you can see it's got straight 68,000, but it's the PLCC version, and it's the a HCMOS version later. So these can be overclocked a little bit without too much of an issue. This one's marked 16 megahertz. It'll probably run up to 25 megahertz. That I'm sure. I'm not sure whether that's the speed this is designed to run at, but yeah, it's an accelerator board for an A500. Yet another one. So you can see it was designed in KiCad. It says there 14 megahertz accelerator, Rev 2.2, and some initials LPJRDVW 2021. So it's very nice. It's got I think there's a little bit of RAM. Yeah, there's some RAM on here as well, and I think that sits in the slow RAM area, but it's actually fast RAM. So it's quite clever how they've done that, so that this can run at 14 megahertz, and you will see the performance boost there. This came from Sparks UK. Again, the guy is a legend. He helps me out in so many ways. He's just one of a number of people on Discord that are fantastic and just help me out no end. And he does send me occasionally, as you'll have seen, a few kits like this, with some of the things, because he's built a few of these himself, and he's offering some of the boards out to other people on Discord there as well. Very cool. And he's even put all the little SMD components on here, look, and labelled them up. So I should be able to make short work of that, I think. The only thing I need to add are some pin header things here, which I've got. I found a seller on eBay actually for these now. You can get like 10 for about 2 or 3 quid, which is not bad, because prior to that they were proving very hard to source these, and it was like, I think you got 4 or 5 for like 5 quid or something. It was very expensive. So yeah, that's a good seller. They're selling 10 for about 3 quid. I should buy some more really while they're at that price. And they are gold plated as well. So yeah, there's going to be a couple of strips of this here. It's going to go into the 68,000 socket, and it's just going to give us a 40 megahertz CPU with, I think, a megabyte. So I think we'll start by just cutting the tape carefully there, just so I can remove the processor. Is there a pin 1 marking? Yeah, there's a dot there, look. So we can pull that off. Let's just put that out of the way. I'll stick that on last, I think. I'm going to start with this RAM over here. So I'm just going to, again, just cut the tape if I can, without damaging anything here. Stick that down, because I want these to stay in place, because it's saving me having to work out how to align them. And then we'll just carefully pull this tape off these, and we'll get the 2 RAM chips on. These are going to be the most difficult thing to solder, I think, probably. Now, I think Sparks said he'd pulled the pins outwards a little bit to make them easy to mount, so yeah, that'll become clear in a minute. Let's just try and get this off. It's taped on the side of the board here, look. So pin 1 on these is up here, isn't it? So it's going to go, sorry, it's the wrong way up. Yeah, it's going to go that way around. Just trying to eyeball this just to see. Yeah, I think I know what he means. I think he's trimmed the end off these pins, because the way that would normally be sat on the board, the pins would be extended out quite a bit actually. If you look at the placement on the pads, if I just position that centrally, look over here, there's hardly anything to solder. You need to get that absolutely bang in the middle, and then it's going to be very tight work soldering it. Anyway, I'll just anchor one corner and the other, and then I'll show you the drag soldering and stuff. You've seen it all before so many times, but it might be interesting to have a look at this to see what challenges we have and what sort of performance we get from this. I'm curious to see whether we can go faster than 40 megahertz and what performance that gives us. I anchored it in this corner here. There's very little room for manoeuvre, as you can see, anchored on that corner there as well. The pads are barely where the pins are, so yeah, you've got to get those dead straight. I think he did say these might not be the exact right type of chip, but they certainly work. So we'll just get a little bit of flux down the side of this, and being careful not to touch the pins, because I'll end up knocking them and bending them out of position. Trying to hover away from them. And as I mentioned previously, that came from Sparks UK as well. Fantastic, that flux. So I'm using the Antex iron as usual to do this, just because it's got a lovely shaped tip. Just add some solder on there. And I'm going to start on the side opposite for where I anchored it over here. So I'll start over here, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to drag solder this or not. Yeah, I am. But if you hover too long, yeah, you get bridges. can just bob in and bob out like that. Let's just get a little bit more solder. Problem is, I've been doing some soldering on terrible fireboards recently, and the chips on those are such fine pitch, you need very little solder, so I'm not added enough solder. There we go, it's looking pretty good, that. So yeah, just need to inspect with magnification and just bob in, bob out where required to get a nice shape to the solder and make sure there's sufficient solder joining the pin to the pad. But hopefully you can see that's not bad actually for a first pass. So that's the hard bit out of the way. I'm going to clean up here now in advance just so I don't get flux everywhere. Yeah, there we go. That should just make it clean to handle. I'm going to try, I don't know how well this is going to work, try and keep them stuck on the tape. Please don't fall off. You know, I can literally just press it down like that there, peel that one off carefully. Wow, the weld's really stuck on there. Yeah, and start from this side here. Handily on the tilt screen it tells you what it is as well, so I can check it. That's an ACT32, isn't it? So that's advanced CMOS TTL compatible, I think. So I'm just on the edge of the mat here. It doesn't look that way, but trust me, I am. So I'm just going to try and position that IC. Hopefully I won't lose the shot here as I put my head in the way of the camera or something. Yeah, that's not too bad. And if I just pick one pin, we'll do the one down here. You might not be able to see very well, but try and zoom you. And add some solder. There you go, that's one pin done. Remove the solder from the tip, go across the other pin. Again, just be barely even near the pin, because you don't want to move it. You just want to flow solder like that. And press it down. Reflow. I will use the Antex iron in a minute. Just reflow that one. That looks okay. We need a little bit of flux around there. And we'll bring in the Antex, get some solder on there. And I'll start with this top side, start away from where I anchored it. And just have a little drag along. I'll reflow that in a sec and then do the same on this side. Need some more solder there, I used it already. Oh, it's gone again. Those pads are quite big though, so it's like underneath the chip. They kind of wick it up. Yeah, there we go. Oh, it's not flowing very well. Let's give that one another flow. So there's one or two here that don't look straight in relation to each other. I've got them as straight as I can. I might be able to reflow it with some hot air afterwards, just briefly, not for too long, just to get them to centralise. But I've anchored every single one here, doing them all in one block here. It's just far easier. And then of course I can clean this area up and then just focus on all the small stuff. Finish off by sticking the 68,000 socket on. It might be a good board for beginners this, but the fact it's all separated 7/4 discrete logic like this, it perhaps is a good learning exercise, not just from a soldering perspective, but actually to look at how it works and what each of these individual logic chips are doing. The clock's going to get divided down to get the 14 megahertz, that's without a doubt, so some of that logic is going to be for that. But the remainder of it, I would say the bulk of it, is probably for the RAM, actually, the slow RAM. There we go. If you start on the opposite side from where you anchored it, that's the one I did before actually, I'm soldering the same chip twice here. That one's already been fitted. Let's do the one next to it. Yeah, not too bad. Trying to avoid those pads there is very difficult because you're right next to the blooming things. Yeah, that'll do. Anyway, you get the idea. I'm just going to keep doing that all the way along both sides. So I completed building it. I'll show you a close-up in a minute. There's a little wire you've got to fit there, yeah? There's no RAM appearing. Doesn't matter what I do, I get no additional RAM. So I spoke to Sparks and he was like, you need to fit that wire there, which I did. Didn't make a difference. Now, I had all of the 100 nanofarad caps off this board missing. So I went on continuity to test my meter, and I did a test between the ground point on the CPU socket, or on one of these 74 series here, to each side of these caps, and the VCC to each side of the caps that were missing. Yeah, because Spark sent me everything apart from the 100 nanofarad caps. And what I wanted to work out is any of those cap positions that were unpopulated, were any of them to do with timing and stuff like that, rather than decoupling caps or bypass caps. And I found, I think, one somewhere up here, C10 I think it was, and that related to the 555, it could have been, I don't know, but there was something there that was like either coupling the signal or something like that. So I fitted that, didn't make a difference. So I then thought, well, let's just get all the other bypass caps on. Maybe there's a current dip or something occurring and it's messing up the RAM detection or something. So as you can see, I fitted every single component. There was nothing missing on here, including the 47 microfarad cap here. I did some research on these jumpers. They're definitely set the right way. They're all in position 1 to 2, which is, you know, this side of the board here. You know, there's an empty pad on the other side for each of those 4 jumpers. Still no RAM. So I think one of the RAM chips is faulty, but what I'm going to do now is put Diagram on there, and I'm going to show you some ways to try and help diagnose a fault like this. So let's get 3.1 out and Diagram in. This is not the very latest version of Diagram. This I've had this for, I don't know, a year or so now, I think. But anyway, P1 on the top here. On these 500 plus sockets, the socket is larger than the chip, and you can see these arrows here. You've got to have it aligned with the bottom there, but pin 1 at the top. Push that in, get the card back in, and you can see this yellow board underneath. It's just a relocator. If you don't use something like that, then obviously it's going to interfere with the ROM. You know, if you plug that straight into the socket, it won't fit. You need to put another socket underneath it or something to stand it off, but anyway, that's okay. And if we switch it back on, hopefully the rain will stop in a minute. So that's all looking normal. Diagram will flash green and black as it checks the chip RAM. If you've only got 1 mega chip RAM, it will go red for a second or so as well. Now, the interesting thing is here, if there was any Ranger or slow RAM detected, it would have appeared here, and it didn't. So it's not detecting it. And we can try, yeah, we can see here, look, 0 KB, it's not found it. We can try completing memory detection, but I doubt that'll do anything. Now look again, 0 KB, so no RAM. So at that point, you might think, what shall I do? Well, I've reflowed around the RAM chips, it's not made a difference. Bear in mind, they're very, very tight on the pad, so could be that, but I think Spark said 1 of 4 of his chips were faulty. So how do you work out where the fault actually is? Is it a connection? Is it the RAM? What actually is it? If we go into memory tests and we do, there's a couple of things you can do here. First we'll do memory edit, manual memory edit. So you can see a block of RAM displayed here, and it defaults to 1FF804, but you can press G, go to, and delete the address that's there. I'll go to C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros. That's where this RAM sits. Now, if you're working with a different accelerator, you know, something like a terrible fire card or something, that address will change. For example, I think on the 530, it starts at 2000000 or something like that. Might be an extra 0 there, or 4 6 zeros or 7 zeros. I think on the 534, you know, they start at different addresses, so you need to find out where that memory is supposed to sit. But anyway, on this, that's where it sits, at C and then 5 zeros. Press return. So we're now pointing at that RAM. You can see it's just garbage there, it's not been initialised. Now, if I type FF there, you can, do you see it changed to FB? If I go back to it, it still shows FF because that's what I typed, but it's showing, it's not showing FF, is it? FF there, FF there, FF there. You can see it says FB. So I'm quite confused actually, because the representation in binary down here is correct, but what's actually shown is not FF. Yeah, there's a few bits that have not been, or one or more bits there that have not been stored in RAM. Now, because we've started at the boundary, you know, the first byte here on C00000, 5 zeros, that is the upper byte. Yeah, you've got 2 chips on here, 2 RAM chips. One holds 8 bits for the upper, one holds 8 bits for the lower of a 16-bit word. The first byte is not holding some bits correctly. You can see as I move away from it, it shows FB, and that one's showing FF, FB. Even though I'll go over it, says FF, it's not, trust me, and it says FB, FF. And that will repeat. You know, if I just keep going on here and go FF, 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 you see the same pattern, yeah? So coming back to the very first byte, like I said, that's the upper byte. And when I say upper byte, what I mean by that is if you were to look at the CPU pinout for the 68000 and look at, say, D15, because that's this uppermost data bit, it's a 16-bit CPU. D50, you start at D0 and it ends on D15, so D15 is this uppermost bit. If you do a connectivity test from that D15 on the CPU to 2 RAM chips, one of them will have a direct connection. Now on some systems, it's worth noting, or some expansions and things, there might be buffering in between. You may have some 245s, some LV245s or HC245s or something sat in between the data bus on the CPU and the RAM. So it gets a little bit more complicated because you'd need to test between the buffer and then look at the pin out of the buffer to see where the input from the buffer comes to work out where D15 goes to. But in any case, we can see there's a problem with the upper byte there. And I've just tested connectivity from D15 on here to this chip, and I had a direct short, so it's this chip here. Now, obviously, you could then test all the 8 data bits there. I could start at D8 and go all the way D9, D10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Check those are connected to here. If they're not, we know that's the problem. And I could do the same with the address bus. Some of the address bus is going to go to this RAM chip here. But the alternative thing you could do is you could now put a memory test on that loops around the range there and use a logic probe and actually just probe these pins, because the other possibility here, as well as a fault, I'm thinking we can have a bad connection. Yeah. Now a bad connection is going to manifest, be visible on a logic probe if you actually probe the pin of the chip. So what I mean by that is if we just connect the logic probe up, so we'll connect a ground here, connect 5 volts to that cap there. Yeah, so it's rebooting at the moment, but the point I'm trying to make here is if we probe the tops of these pins here, can you see? We get something shows you've got a connection. If there's no LED there at all, yeah, it shows it's high impedance. Now, on certain connections like address lines and things, if you had a problem with that, you're going to see a high impedance signal, which leads us to the memory test here. So if we go into, where's it gone now? Manual memory test. Yeah, so you put a range in again. So we know it starts at C5 zeros. Yep. Return end address. So I think, and again, you need to check this. You could use calculator to work out how many bytes would be in that range. But I think it's C, F, 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 5 Fs. Slow or fast? We'll do slow. Now, slow, do you want to disable shadow RAM? Choose yes. And you can see straight away here, here's our problem. Here's our problem. Now, earlier, I'm showing you this as I've made a little bit of progress. I know that what the problem is, and this is why I'm showing you this, so that'll be useful for you to see how I actually work this out. When I went in here, first of all, I had like 3 or 4 bits at random places, yeah? So I fixed some of them, but I'm onto the right tracks here. I know what the fault is. It's a bad connection on the RAM. Pulse in, nothing. High impedance. And if I press onto that, you'll see, or press near the pad at the bottom, look, we've got a signal, yeah? That's pressing at the pad, just on the very edge of it, because there's hardly anything exposed, but on the pin, nothing. That is the problem. I know that's the problem because, like I say, before you saw this part of the video, I worked out what the problem was. It was down here. 3 or 4 other bits have been fixed. They've just got like 1 bit to deal with now. So that's the sort of technique you can use to easily work out what's going on. And while we're in a slow memory test like this, it's still going. It's only tested 32K so far. It takes an incredible amount of time to go around. You'll see pulsing on all these things here generally. There might be the odd high or low, and you can compare from one chip to the other. Now, if you've got problems on both chips, obviously that could cause you all sorts of problems, but in general, if you're finding high impedance signals there, where the LEDs are not shown at all, you've got a problem. Yeah, you just need to either reflow it or work out whether the trace is damaged or whatever, and then retest it, and you'll get a little bit further, and eventually you'll work your way through the problem. But if all the connectivity was all right around here, it would have been the RAM. And actually, it's ironic, but I ordered some RAM thinking it was going to be RAM because Spark said one of his was bad. 1 out of 4 chips had failed. So yeah, I've wasted some money, unfortunately, on some RAM that I don't need. I could probably send that to Sparks if he wants it. Anyway, I thought you'd find that interesting. And you can see the connections down there. They look alright. They look alright. So anyway, let's get some more flux on and have a little bit of a flow there. But I think I'm going to try and push them towards the pad, because can you see, there's next to nothing exposed on these. They are such wide chips, and the pads literally just accommodate them when they've been chopped, the ends chopped off, and that's what Sparks UK had to do to get these to fit. So I kid you not, this is about the 3rd time I've reflowed this chip here. But I do know that this is definitely the issue. I mean, we just seen it. We've seen, because I'm not, you wouldn't be able to see from the distance, but we were probably that pin, it was high impedance, and then I went down to the pad, the very edge of it, I could just about touch, and suddenly we had a signal. It was pulsing. That shows me that it is the connectivity there. It can't be anything else. I'll be very, very surprised if this doesn't fix it. Certainly because we had 4 bits or 5 bits that were bad. Now we've only got 1. It could be that 1 bit is faulty. So I've got a little bit of solder there, and I'm just going to bob into these here, each of these on this end, and try and give sufficient time. But you can see the problem is there's no pad. The pad is like underneath the pin. So yeah, you do need to get really good flux, lots of solder, and inspect, and just hope you get a really good flow to the underside of it. It's rare for me to have a problem with getting connections on chips like this, you'll know. It's very rare. I've done so many of these types of builds on terrible fireboards and stuff, and you know what, I never have a problem. But with these, yeah, they're painful, these RAM chips. It's looking good. I'll just check it with magnification. Yeah, it looks alright, but be honest, it looked alright before. It's very hard to say. If I put you on macro when I've cleaned this up, you will see what I mean in terms of how it can look alright, but actually it blooming well isn't. Yeah, let's give that a go. So let's see what diagram reports this time. It'd be really nice if it showed the RAM. Oh yes, there we go. We've got some RAM. Now, strangely enough, it's saying CB FFFF. That's not the full range. So I'm not sure what's going on there. And then look here, it says 768. So have we still got a problem? Let's just do complete memory detection. Ah, look, 1024. Yeah, it's something to do with shadowing or something when it's detecting that RAM there, because normally you see slow RAM at that address, see 5 zeros, you'd have 512k. And we're trying to squeeze a meg into there, so I don't know what's going on with the detection, but yeah, on the first pass it's only able to see 768, I think, but then when you do a full detection, complete the detection, it goes, you've got a meg. So I guess the only way we're going to know whether that's alright is to just do test detected fast mem. Let's leave that going. I'm not going to bore you with watching that, I'll just jump to it completing. And there we go, getting near the end, all done, 1024k. And then it says no memory found, yeah, so it's, that's the end of that block. No worries at all, full 1 meg. The interesting thing is, it did say it's testing Zorro 3 at the top there. That's just a bug, I think, in terms of the range that it's looking at the moment. That doesn't sit within Zorro 3 at all. That's the initial, slow memory area. I think you can fit a bit more than a meg actually, but yeah, nevertheless, that's the way these are set up. This is why this board is designed to have meg of fast memory at the slow memory address range there. So I switch that off, just pull this out. Now, a good test actually might be Kickstart 3.2. I haven't used that yet, but what I do know is Kickstart 3.2 needs 2 megabytes of RAM. You might not be aware, if you're considering upgrading to 3.2, well, there's a few things to consider actually. The RAM is the first thing. The second thing is compatibility. You're going to lose a small percentage of compatibility if you jump to Kickstart 3.2. So this is why I've put it on a test ROM here from my licensed version, but I will not be using it anywhere. This is literally for testing, to see what works, what doesn't. I mean, straight away, I am unhappy with the fact that it needs 2 meg of RAM. I mean, you could argue that it's an evolution and, you know, it's moving forward, it's a good idea, but you will get some incompatibility. So anyway, let's try that. If that boots now, well, we've already got 2 meg on here, we've got 2 meg of chip actually, but we'll give it a try and see what happens. Ah, there we go. So it booted straight from floppy there. Let's just take the disk out, make sure it is 3.2 and I haven't burned 3.1 to it or something. Let's just wait for the sticky disk in screen, because it should be different. There we go, 3.2. Fantastic. I can hear the drive clicking away. So I'll stick the disk back in. That's booted okay. Memory, hey, there we are, 1 meg of slow, fantastic. So we'll do test all memory. And in fact, you can do test the specific range. Let's just test that 1 meg slow. There we go, it's working. You'd know pretty quick if that was not right. So let's let that go around, but look how fast that is going around the range. That's because it's able to run at 14 megahertz with that RAM. That was incredibly quick there for a meg. Very, very quick. So I have no doubt that that is running at 14 megahertz. So if you test the chip memory, alright, there's twice as much, but if you watch how long this takes, it's more than twice as long. Yeah? It's like 4 times as long or more, which is what you'd expect. You know, just watch how long that is taking to go around each one of the separate stages there for 2 meg. It's way slower. Way slower. So I'll give it the June test. This may not be compatible with 3.2, honestly no idea. It probably is. Obviously when they're developing new versions of Kickstart like this, they aim to be as compatible as possible, but you know, the very fact that it needs 2 megabytes of RAM, you know, shows you straight away there's obviously a reliance on needing 2 meg, which changes everything, doesn't it? If it's using some of that memory on boot, you've got to question how that's going to adversely affect some games and things. But I would suggest probably most stuff would be alright. You might find it's like 99.6% compatible or something. It might not be that compatible, I don't know. I also know that with some of the terrible fireboards and other accelerators, some people have had problems with Kickstart 3.2. So yeah, test it before you commit to using it, certainly. So, I know what you're thinking, let's see the benchmarks. Well, there's a technical issue with this, actually. There's an Achilles heel. This has the same sort of Achilles heel that the TF530 had. Now, if you saw that video, you'll know that it only had 2 meg of RAM, and by the time you'd booted up the OS and all that sort of stuff, you had about, I don't know, 1.5 meg, 1.3 meg free of that RAM, and then you would load software, and the benchmarks and things would load okay, and you get nice high performance shown on them and stuff, but you'd load something like Frontier, and it would be really, really slow at loading, because WHD load uses some RAM to put an older version of Kickstart to give you backwards compatibility with that game, and then obviously it loads the assets for that game from the original disk into RAM as well. You know, you get some cache and stuff going on, and there's not enough RAM. Yeah, that was the problem with the TF530. You could get around it very easily by just running stuff straight from floppy, or booting without the CLI, you know, the command line. You could boot without a startup script. You could do set patch, CPU, fast ROM, and then navigate to, you know, using the OS there, you know, the command line, to your WHD load game folder, and you could do WHD load the name of the slave, you know, .slave, press return, it would load it, and it would be fine. And you could use the system that way. So this is going to be even more restrictive, that you've only got 1 meg of RAM here, and I'm struggling to get a way to boot this up. Now you can see I've connected the 590. When I say a way to boot this up, something where I can boot from a hard disk and we can run some diagnostics software, you know, benchmarking software, and see how it performs. Now 590 is working, but there are some issues, and I'll talk about that in a second. I also tested this in the Rev 4 A2000. It doesn't like the A2091. In fact, it doesn't like anything. It doesn't like anything alongside it. So if you stick an 8 meg RAM board under this to give you 8 meg of fast RAM, it may or may not work. If it does work, the problem, you'll see the problem, because we've got the same problem with this. If you can get additional RAM in your system, that RAM takes precedent, you know, priority, if you like, over this RAM. which means that when you load games and benchmarking and stuff, it doesn't run from here, it runs from the other RAM. Now in this case here, it's going to run from the RAM on the A590, which means instead of running at 14 megahertz, it goes, I can't access that RAM at 14 megahertz, I can only do it at 7.19 or whatever. So of course you don't get any benefits at all. You do get a small benefit because when it's not doing assertions, you know, it's not asserting the RAM and the ROM and all that, I'm not sure about ROM access, but RAM, when it's not looking at the RAM and stuff and it's just doing processing internally within what's in the registers, you obviously see quite a bit of a boost, and that translates to about 30%. And you'll see that if I switch this on and we boot from the A590, this will boot that way. Let's just make sure there's no disk in, there isn't. You can see the LED there, so if we give it a minute or two, we will be able to boot up. We can go into sysinfo and you will see it's only showing about 30% speed increase, and that is because of the thing I've just mentioned about the RAM. It's not running from here, can't run at full speed. So yeah, that's its Achilles heel. If you run it on its own, yeah, and you just boot games from floppy, most of the time on smaller games and things, you know, that fit in that RAM, you'll find everything runs really fast, runs really well. You could probably boot the you know, original floppy disk version of Frontier, and as long as you've not got an incompatibility issue with your Kickstart for that game, you'll find everything will run. So I mean 3.2 would be a bad idea. You know, if you're going to stick this straight into a 500, you want 1.3 and maybe 2.04 as a switchable ROM, and then you're kind of getting the best of both, and just use this on its own. And whilst we're talking about incompatibilities, this is that issue I mentioned with 3.1.4. I think actually 3.1.4 came from the same development team that did 3.2. So this is something you get. Let's just do count. Oh, I can't even get past it, look. So I now need to power it off, swap back to 3.1 and reboot it. So this is what I mean. It's only a small thing. You could stick icon lib or whatever it is on your hard disk from your 3.2 disk when you install 3.2, and you won't get this issue. But I just don't like things like this where they change the contents of the ROM fundamentally, where it breaks things like this, where you need to do something to a hard disk image in order to get it working. I want to keep this 3.1 hard disk as a 3.1 hard disk, not stick some icon libraries and stuff on it that don't need to be there. So with that 3.2 icon lib thing and the 3.1.4, you know, I'm probably whining about nothing, but you know what, this is just my opinion, and my opinion is I don't like it. I don't like the fact that they would remove stuff from the ROM and, you know, need to have it on as a lib on the actual drive or whatever. You know, if you're going to do upgrades to ROMs, try and fix the bugs in the ROMs, add efficiency into the ROMs, maybe double the size of the ROM, and do it in such a way, you know, that you don't break any compatibility if you can. But anyway, we're back on 3.1. Let's boot it up. You can see we've got 3 meg, so we've got 2 meg of fast RAM here. We've got 1 meg of slow RAM, and we'll check that first. Actually, I'll just show you that if we go into sysinfo. The main thing is I'm happy it's actually working this way. Where are we going now? More utils, sysinfo. You can see it's pretty quick at that point, actually. And if we do a speed test, we'll look at the RAM in a sec. But I can see the problem straight away here. Hang on. So look at that. that's not what I expected. 780 compared to an 8600 standard stock. We're a bit more than I said actually. Not 30%. We're 47% faster. Yeah. So we are 47% faster. It says here now. Over here now we're talking. 12.3 it says on the megahertz. It's never accurate, sysinfo. It will be more accurate in AIBB. But anyway, the problem, as you can see here, can you see all these Kickstart the modules here and stuff from ROM? They're in fast RAM, yeah, starting at 200 whatever. That's from the A590. So what you really need is you need all these modules here, or libraries I should say, I think, installed into that slow RAM. If that slow RAM absorbed those, things will be running a lot quicker. We've got one down there. Can you see that expansion has ended up in slow RAM? Now you may be thinking, just change the priority on boot. Well, I've got news for you. I tried that. I tried using a few different utilities and I was able to change the priority so that the slow RAM took priority rather than the fast RAM. And with the A590, it just instantly fails. As soon as you've set the command, it changes it. You're okay, and then you do another command or you come out of the shell, the system just resets. You lose video completely. It's very strange. And I think the problem there is the drive trying to do DMA transfers to the slow RAM, and it can't do. So this is the problem with that. And why I can't show you a full benchmark this way. What I'm probably going to have to do is create a bootable workbench disk, I think. I need to go away and work out how to do that. I've never done it, I don't think. And stick sysinfo on a floppy. Because if we do that, we don't have the A590 connected, you will then see quite a nice performance boost compared to what we're seeing now. But if we look at the memory, you'll see we've got 2 meg fast RAM there. And as I say, look, that starts at 20000. And that's the memory that's taking priority. And it's got a priority of 0 there, look. And the 1 meg slow, look, -5. And that is the blooming problem. That is the problem. I mean, bear in mind there isn't much RAM there anyway, so even if that was a priority, you know, you set a priority on that, by the time you've booted up, there might not even be enough room in there to cache the ROM. And caching the ROM, you know, when you use CPU, well, you've got fast ROM as an option. I'm not sure if that deliberately looks for fast RAM, rather than, I don't think you can specify slow RAM. So therein lies the next problem. I'm sure someone down below might be able to post in the comments on suggestions. Chip RAM is -10 in terms of its priority. But all three types are there, listed correctly, and obviously we have got a performance boost of about 47%. So we'll run AIBB, we may see some differences here. You see, what you really need here is, you know, if we can't change the priority, you need something to fill that fast RAM. Yeah, and look, we've got the same problem. It's not 7.19, it's 7.09 megahertz. And that's what it's showing us. It's showing us running at stock speed, and that's because it ain't running from that RAM. It's painful to understand. It's really difficult to know what to do about it. So that took flipping ages, like a minute blooming ages, and you can see U versus A600, there's nothing in it, is there? It's marginal, there's next to no difference there. Now what we might be able to do, and I can show you this now in real time, when I used the memory priority thing, I was doing it on boot, and maybe that was messing it up. Now we're not actually accessing the hard disk. Maybe I can change the priority over, then we can launch that. Maybe that'll then give us a performance boost. That would be nice, because it would save me messing around with a floppy drive. And as default, if you pass it no switches at all, we should see a list of what's going on. So we see the same thing reflected there. We can see the start range and the end range, the size, sorry. Start and the size of each of our blocks. We can see the priority, so chip memory is the lowest, -10. Then our slow memory, -5, and expansion memory is 0. So I think if we change this memory in the middle here, which is, its name is memory, and you've got to do it by name, I think, so you put the name first as the first parameter, and then you put start, and then you put start address, which is C123455, leave a space, and then you give it priority. Let's set it to 10, so that should be the highest priority RAM. And if we run that command again, this is where it bombed. Look, it's bombed again. Just even listing it bombs it. So is that an incompatibility with 3.1? What is it? I don't know. That utility says it needs greater than, or equal to Kickstart 2.4. So can't even change the memory priority. As soon as you change the memory priority, it just bombs like that. You lose the video, as I explained. Switch it off, switch it on, it'll be back to normal again. So we can't even adjust the priority of the memory. I've tried it on boot in the startup script right at the start. I've tried it at the bottom of the startup script. I've tried adjusting the fast memory priority before the slow memory priority to try and avoid a problem that way around. Still got the same problem. So there seems to be no way to deal with it other than just boot from floppy. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, it's the fast RAM causing the problem, so let's switch it off. Let's disable the fast RAM so we don't have any fast RAM. We haven't got a problem then, have we? We can't be giving it a higher priority when it's not there, yeah? But as you will see, it won't work. It won't work at all. That's disabled, so it's got no fast RAM. Switch it on. This is how I know it was a problem with that RAM. When you do that change priority, it's messing up the A590, because watch, switch it on, we get a black screen. I'll tell you what happens. Gone. LED flash yellow, off. Look, video's gone. Video goes straight away. So there is some sort of issue when the A590 has no longer got any fast RAM. Yeah, it should drop to PIO. Something goes wrong at that point with the RAM. When it's trying to address the RAM on here, yeah, use that as PIO. It's got a problem. Now, Liv2 had a look at this, and we might look at it further in this video. I'm not sure whether I've got the incentive to dig into it. But one of the things Liv was pointing out is the I think it's the AS signal is kind of like masked from the board here in order to do some clever stuff with it to get like zero wait time access. I think, you know, fast access to the RAM on here, and then it outputs AS7, which is like some sort of 7 megahertz assertion line back to the board. And there might be some issue with that in terms of, you know, the A590 is not expecting the way that the timing of that signal is done. I think Liv was suggesting you might be able to NAND or AND one of the signals with the other on there, the AND with the AS7, and then you might solve the problem. So I might try that, I don't know, but ultimately you can see how this is an Achilles heel, and this is a problem. That, yeah, you could use an A590 with it, but then you lose a large percentage of the performance, you know. Well, maybe not that large, it was almost 50% faster, wasn't it? It's going to be 100% faster at least when you've not got the problem with the A590. So I'll try and set up a boot disconnect, a boot floppy, and we'll try and run sysinfo straight from floppy, and hopefully we should see 100% increase in performance. Helps if I can type properly, doesn't it? Oh, there's no dir command, is there? Because I think dir and cd are actual commands, aren't they? We can do cd, can we? Yeah, we can. So if we do cd sysinfo, that's worked. And if we just do sysinfo, hopefully this will work. Yeah, so you might want to copy your directory command across. Is that going to work? Yeah, there we go. So hopefully this will work. If we do speed, and you can see here now, look, slow RAM, we should see a boost in performance. Look at that, 2.72. That is exactly what I was expecting. Now, yeah, it froze for a minute there, but look, 2.72, that is incredibly fast. But this does show, you know, highlight the point there, that, you know, you don't get any performance boost really, but when you use any of the kind of memory in the system. It's running at 14 megahertz there. So yeah, very nice. That is a really good little boost in performance, almost 3 times faster than an A500. So I copied the directory command onto the root of the floppy, so hopefully we can do a dir. Yeah, now we can. That's supposed to belong in C, but I don't know whether they've got paths set and all that sort of stuff. And bear in mind, this startup disk is not booting properly, it's not bringing up the UI, is it? But we can now do cd AIBB V67. There we go, that's what it was. And it was something similar to that, and then we can just do AIBB V67, and hopefully that should run nice and fast as well. Yep, there we go, and we can see straight away the difference here. Oh, it's gone about libraries or something. Anyway, look, CPU clock 14.3, so that's reporting it is running nice and fast. So if we do, I don't know, let's do a memory test. I'm guessing that's going to be testing it versus the RAM it's actually loaded into. So it should be nice and fast, and it is. Look at that, that's pretty good. You know, we're on the way to performance of a 1200, not quite. Almost double an A600 there on that particular test. Let's do integer math. So again, that took quite a while, and yeah, you know, there's a boost there, isn't there? Again, we're on the way to 1200, faster than a 600. Yeah, it's not that staggering though, is it? Try a sort, that might be fairly quick, I would think, and a sieve, I guess, would be quick as well. Just as we experienced with the TF520, actually, when you got a faster clock rate, those tend to gain a fair bit. Very similar level, you know, it's definitely faster than 600. You're saying there 2.05, isn't it? And here we are again, this time with Frontier, written from ADF. It was a little bit painful. I had to extract it from a huge archive. It took ages to find it. Write to compact flash card, put the compact flash card into the PCMCI adapter, plug that into the 1200, copy the ADF across. You can see I used the Fairlight version here. Legends, those guys, they ripped so many games back in the day, and so many more modern ones actually into the late 90s and 2000s. So yeah, I can see a performance tweak there, definitely. When we boot this with a stock 68K in a minute, hopefully you'll see it will be pretty jerky. So yeah, bit jerky there, very jerky in fact, but just watch the difference in a minute. Right, let's boot with the standard 68,000 now. Yeah, there's a definite difference there. Can you see how much slower that is? I'll put these side by side so you can actually see. Wow, that was well and truly stuck in there. No pins bent. That's looking pretty good. So yeah, so 68,000, can you see that? FN16. 16 megahertz. So yeah, it's more than capable of running at 14 megahertz. It did cross my mind that if you could divide the clock by 3, you know, change that 8 megahertz into, I think, would it be 24 megahertz, that would probably run, actually. In fact, sorry, it wouldn't be 24 megahertz, would it be 21-ish megahertz? That would run fine at that speed, I'm sure of it. Can you see the solder points here? This looks awful. This is some of the worst soldering I've done. And it's not really the soldering that's the problem, it's the pins on the socket. It's one of these sockets, and I did notice it as soon as I start to solder it. The solder is not adhering to the pins, and you get horrible looking solder like that. Can you see that? It looks terrible. That is hands down the worst looking bit of soldering I've done. Now the problem is, you can see there's not very much solder on some of these pins and there's lots of solder on the others. Now if you had too much solder, this is one of these sockets, can you see here, it's metal on the underside. The solder leaks up the pin, yeah, it wicks up the pin and goes on the underneath of it, and you get bridges, shorts really easily. So yeah, I mentioned that when I was doing the 2 meg chip RAM adapter from Live 2. Actually, it's that same problem I described in that video that happens with the type of socket I've got on here. So I don't want to add extra solder to these ones that don't look so clever. It's fine, the connectivity is alright, it just doesn't look that good, but I'm going to live with that the way things stand. Anyway, I'm going to stick this in the ultrasonic cleaner next. That was the whole point, to take the processor out. I don't really want to clean that, it's fine. So you're probably sick of seeing this now. I've shown it so many times on the recent videos. But yeah, thanks to my patrons on Discord, some great people there, people that I would class as good friends. Where's my board gone now? I've lost it. Oh, here we go. Lob it in there. I'm using IPA again, no PCB cleaner here, and we're making sure, because we're just using IPA, we're not using the heating aspects of this. I'm very pleased with how that's come out, actually. Alright, soldering aside on that side there, it's immaculate. So the ultrasonic's done a really good job on that. Pin 1 on these is marked with a little dot on the chip there, and there's a little dot on the PCB, so I can easily just line that up and make sure it's aligned. Push it in, like that, that's it. So the other thing you can do with this is you can do a long reset. We've got RAM there, look. If I do Control Amiga and hold it for 5 or 6 seconds, and then let go, in theory that should disable the onboard RAM if it's working properly. There you go, it won't look. It's got no slow RAM. So yeah, you can disable it that way. And if you've got RAM in the trapdoor slot, that will then be enabled at that point. I'm not really sure why you would want to do that, to be honest. I mean, you might get a level of compatibility, you know, that RAM's not there. In my case here, the RAM there is 1 meg upgrade, and that's classed as chip RAM. The way this A500 Plus is configured as default, you know, so we've got 2 meg chip, but the RAM on there, from holding down Control Amiga and doing a long reset for about 6 seconds, you know, it's disabled that RAM there. But you don't necessarily need to assemble all of this stuff here. I've seen this with literally just a couple of chips up here, I think, or it might be up here. I'll stick a photo up there from GitHub, but you don't need to assemble the whole thing, and you don't need to add the RAM. You could just go with just the processor, and you'll get the 47% speed boost that we saw earlier. But of course, with that RAM, as you saw in the benchmarks, we get almost 3 times the performance of a stock 500. So it's not a bad board for beginners. These RAM chips were a pain to solder. I had to replace a pin on this, actually. I broke a pin off and then had to replace the section in the middle there. So yeah, if you want to see more on this, check out CRG. He's done a video on this. He bought one of these from Sparks UK in my Discord. My Discord is available to patrons only, by the way. It's one of the tiers there. But yeah, if you want to see more on this, check out Glenn's video. He's done a lot more testing, you know, trying different games and things. He's done some direct captures and things, and it just looks a lot better and more presentable compared to what I've shown in this video. So I do hope you found the video interesting. Thanks to everybody that supports me on Patreon and on Discord. The channel wouldn't exist without your ongoing support. You know, you've kept the channel going for the last 2 years. I am super appreciative. Catch you in the next video.